Hey guys, how are you? I'm a bit late on this Plan With Me video, but I figured I would still share what I did in my bullet journal for the month of June. I've been reading a lot of books and seeing a lot of movies with 80s nostalgia, and one of the books I've read this past month was Ready Player One by Ernest Cline, and I was just inspired by all the 80s references. Of course, I am a 90s kid, so a lot of the things just went over my head, but I'm really enjoying learning a little bit more about this decade. So I drew this small cassette tape, and interesting fact, one of the first albums that I bought backed on a cassette tape, it was Jars of Clay, and I believe the album was Blind, and I used to listen to that all the time in my small cassette player. I love that thing. So while I'm fine-tuning the details of my drawing, I want to talk to you guys a little bit about this movie, Ready Player One, and it's directed by Steven Spielberg. And I guess he wanted to kind of nod to the classic movies he has done in the past. So a lot of it, you can tell that it's a Steven Spielberg movie. The thing is, I saw the movie right after I read the book, and so I realized that a lot of the plot changed. I mean, there's still a lot of the 80s nostalgia and references that the book has, but the story goes a bit different in the book, and I enjoyed it more. I enjoyed the story in the book more. So I was a little disappointed, but I guess they wanted to cater it to a younger audience, the young adults, and so I understand why they did change a lot of the things. But for me it's really interesting because the screenplay was also written by Ernest Cline, so I figured that if you are the author and you wrote this book, you would want it to be as close to your book as possible, right? But I guess they probably convinced him that, we want this to be a hit, and so we're going to make it accessible to younger audiences. But it was interesting. While I was reading this book, I couldn't help but think about the Guardians of the Galaxy and about Star-Lord. He has those mixes from his mom, and they're all like music from the 80s, and how recently we have just been fixating on decades in the past. And in my opinion, I think it's because we don't like where the future is going, or the future is very uncertain, so we always look to the past and romanticize how it was during that time. I mean, I'm all for keeping the past alive. I think it's important for us to remember our childhoods and hang on to that childlike spirit in us. But I think it gets to the point that we romanticize it too much. And we think that if we were in this time or in a certain decade, that things would be better. And that's not true. Each decade had its own set of problems, and as much as we would like to hold it up as the best decade ever, it's just not true. So yeah, that's what I've been thinking about. I always end up going towards the philosophical side of things, so I hope you guys don't mind. As you can see, I decided to add some color to my cassette tape, and also because it hides some of the mistakes I made with the pen. So the first spread that I always do is the book spread. I really love writing down what I've been reading, and it's been a really productive year in that area. And I also am participating in a literary challenge, so I always write down the goal for the month. This month it's Belgravia by Julian Fellows. If you don't know Julian Fellows, he wrote the screenplay for Downton Abbey, and Downton Abbey is amazing, guys. I've watched it about 3 times all the way through. Yeah. So I'm excited to see what he writes about in this new novel. Then after, I always do an expense spreadsheet, and it's pretty simple. I just write down what comes in and what goes out. In the future, I hope to be more specific. I hope to figure out how I can write down what I managed to save during the month. And now I'm going to organize the first week of June. Last month I tried a few different types of spreads, and the one that I love the most is the one that you can see right now. I just kind of divided into 4 parts on the first page. As you can see, I'm using a postcard as a ruler. I'm probably freaking some people out, but I have no idea where my ruler is. And so this will have to do. I usually count down the amount of dots I use to divide each section. That's the amazing part of having a notebook that has bullet points. You can divide it better, and you don't necessarily need a ruler. I just have shaky hands, so it always ends up being very shaky lines. So I'm writing down the days of the week. On the second page, I will divide it into 3 parts, and Friday has the bigger space. Saturday and Sunday I divided into 2 because I don't do a lot on Sundays. I do work on Saturdays, so I have to have a little bit of space just in case I have to write down something I need to do. And so it looks like this. I hope that makes sense how I explained that. My weekly spread is done in such a way that I can use it to write down appointments and also to write down whatever I need to do during the day. For now, it's worked out for me because I don't have a lot I need to do during the day. So I usually have this space, and I try to design something that has to do with the theme of the month. And since I went for this kind of music 80s theme, I decided on this doodle of a headphone and some flowers growing out of the cables. Of course, I couldn't do without a cup of tea, and lately my go-to tea has been black tea. I actually bought it at a natural food store, or I guess in the States you call it organic food store. And I add a little bit of dairy-free milk. I always make sure I start with pencil and then I add in ink later. I tend to make a lot of mistakes, and so this is a good way to prevent them. While I was drawing this, I put on some music, and but what I'm really amazed by is this man's talent. Not only does he create beautiful music, he has this amazing way with words. There are so many songs that I've listened to in specific periods in my life and that have really resonated with me. And while I was drawing this, I started listening to Light. And towards the beginning, he says something like this, in which I added to my bullet journal. May these words find your ears. The world is brighter than the sun now that you're here. And this is so beautiful, guys. Like, it's so inspirational and it's so motivational, and I don't know, I just love his lyrics, and they always manage to encourage me. I really do feel that it's a gift, and what a marvelous gift he has. So I managed to make a mistake, and instead of ripping the page out, which is what I always want to do, that's how much of a perfectionist I am, I found different ways to cover it up, and one of them is just to cut a piece of sticky note paper, and I glue it on, and once it's glued on the paper, I just write on top of it. I feel like it gives a pop to the spread, and I liked how it turned out. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Whenever I'm organizing my bullet journal, I find it really therapeutic, and I also want to remind you that the world is brighter than the sun now that you're here, and I hope this video finds you well and that you have a beautiful day, and I will see you guys next time.